I mostly read public domain books here on Glenn Reads Books to You, and they were written a long time ago, so they're usually racist, or sexist, or bigoted, but in there somewhere is a story, and that's why those stories are famous. Other times, I read works from independent authors, and they're delightfully not racist, but they might have adult language or adult situations, like, making sex. So that's your warning, but I'm sure you're grown up enough to handle it. Don't write to me complaining. Wonder what happened to Mel Gibson, since he just kind of disappeared after making Apocalypto. I wonder what he did so bad. Ah, damn it, it's you. I forgot about you. I hate that you know where I live. Welcome to the Glenn Reads Books to You mansion. It's a fun little bit where I pretend to live in a mansion and not just recording in my basement. This is where I read the hottest public domain books and short stories. This week, we're reading chapters 5 and 6 of The Wind and the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Want to hear about the author? No, let's get to the fun facts. That's the best part. I dug up some dirt on his marriage to Elspeth from the Daily Mail of all places. Kenneth was weirdly sexless most of his life. I learned that. He was just like hanging out with his friends and smoking his pipe. And it wasn't until he was almost 40 that he decided he should probably get married, and that's when he met Elspeth. And it was weird. Quote, theirs was a strange courtship carried out most entirely by letter. They gave each other fictitious names. He was Dino, and she was Minky, and he pledged his devotion and physical ardor in faux cockney and baby talk, while she responded in the language of the West Country milkmaid. If anyone listening to the show has it in them to email me an example of what that sounds like, please do. I would love to know what the hell that's supposed to sound like. The correspondence was mawkish, coquettish, and cringe-making. Just like the words mawkish and coquettish. He didn't want to get married to her, but she pressured him, and boy did she regret it, because the guy just hated having sex. Kenneth had always worried about having sex, and he told himself, in a diary or something, that when the time came, he would try to be depraved, which shows that this man did not know how to fuck. I quote, from the outset, they led separate lives in the house that they shared in Kensington. He retreated gratefully to the solitude of his study, which a friend recalled resembled a nursery. Elspeth tried to put on a brave face and just write poetry about how much he sucks. But they got buck wild at least once because they had their son Alistair, who unfortunately was half blind and by all accounts dull-witted. But they decided that, nope, he's a prodigy, and so they just kept telling him that until he became a spoiled, braggy kid. And then based the character of Toad on him, saying, well, isn't this guy a jerk? You know it's you, right? So this poor kid barely saw his parents, and when he did, he just spent time with his dad, and his dad would tell him stories about these characters that were eventually the book that we're reading now. Someone who actually had the name Constance Smedley overheard Kenneth telling him the bedtime stories and said, you got gold oozing out of your mustache. You got to publish it. So he did, and on publication, he said that it's a cozy world devoid of, quote, weary sex problems. He said that. Those were his words. His son was really bad at school, and unfortunately, his dad decided to use his fame to get him into another school where he, unfortunately, did just as bad. And then one day, the poor kid laid his head on a railway line and ended his life before the age of 20. Elspeth and Kenneth ran around Italy drinking and visiting churches. They hated each other, and when they moved back to England, Kenneth died in his sleep from a brain hemorrhage, age 73. Then Elspeth got weird, spending the next 14 years rewriting the history of their marriage and trying to claim that The Wind of the Willows was based on her. Who would she even be? Ratty? Not even the mole. I hate the mole, but she's not the mole because everyone's after the mole trying to... I don't know. Why don't we go downstairs? The clock says I gotta shut up. There you go, y'all cozy, huh? Yeah, y'all cozy in my house that you invited yourself to. Well, good. Why don't we read chapter 5? Dulci Domum. Domum. It's Latin for home. The sheep ran huddling together against the hurdles, blowing out in thin nostrils and stamping with delicate forefeet, their heads thrown back and a light steam rising from the crowded sheep pen in the frosty air, as the two animals hastened in by high spirits. With much chatter and laughter, they were returning cross-country after a long day's outing with Otter, hunting and exploring on the wide uplands where these certain streams tributary to their own river had their first small beginnings, and the shades of this sort of winter day were closing in on them, and they had still some distance to go. Plodding at random across the plow, they had heard the sheep and made for them. And now, leading from the sheep pen, they found a beaten track that made walking a lighter business, and responded, moreover, to that small inquiring something which all animals carry inside them, saying unmistakably, "Yes, quite right. This leads home." "It looks as if we're coming to a village," said the mole somewhat dubiously, slackening his pace as the track that had in time become a path and then had developed into a lane now handed them over to the charge of a well-metalled road. The animals did not hold with villages, and their own highways, thickly frequented as they were, took an independent course regardless of church, post office, or public house. Never mind," said the rat. "At this season of the year, they're all safe indoors, and by this time sitting around the fire. Men, women, and children, dogs, and cats, and all. Oh, they're actually interacting with humans. I kind of wasn't sure if that's what they were getting at. So we actually know that there's humans in this world. How have the humans not seen frogs drive around in tiny cars? We shall slip through all right without any bother or unpleasantness, and we can have a look at them through their windows if you'd like, and see what they're doing." The rapid nightfall of mid-December had quite beset the little village as they approached it on soft feet over a thin fall of powdery snow. Little was visible but the squares of dusky orange-red on either side of the street, where the firelight or lamplight of each cottage overflowed through the casements into the dark world without. Most of the low-latticed windows were innocent of blinds, and to the lookers in from outside, the inmates gathered round the tea table, absorbed in handiwork or talking, with laughter and gesture, had each had a happy grace, which is the last thing the skilled actor shall capture, the natural grace which goes with perfect unconsciousness of observation. Moving at will from one theater to another, the two spectators, so far from home themselves, had something of wistfulness in their eyes as they watched a cat being stroked, a sleepy child picked up and huddled off to bed, or a tired man stretch and knock out his pipe at the end of the smoldering log. But it was from one little window with its blind drawn down, a mere blank transparency on the night, that the sense of home and the little curtained world within the walls, the larger stressful world of outside nature, shut out and forgotten. Most pulsated. Close against the white blind hung a bird cage, clearly silhouetted, every wire, perch, and an appurtenance. I'm going to look that up. I mean, I figured it just means all the details of the cage, but god dang it, how do you pronounce appurtenance? Appurtenance. Okay, an accessory or other item associated with particular activity of a style of living. All right, fine. Distinct and recognizable even to yesterday's dull-edged lump of sugar. On the middle perch of the fluffy occupant, the head tucked well into the feathers, seemed so near to them as to be easily stroked. Had they tried, even the delicate tips of this plumped-out plumage penciled plainly on the illuminated screen. Why did he do that? As they looked, the sleepy little fellow stirred uneasily, woke, shook himself, and raised his head. Oh, they could see the gape of his tiny beak as he yawned in a bored sort of way, looked around, and then settled his head into his back again, while the ruffled feathers gradually subsided into the perfect stillness. Then a gust of bitter wind took them in the back of the neck. Oh, a small sting of frozen sleet on the skin woke them as from a dream, and they knew their toes to be cold and their legs tired, and their own home a distant, a weary way. Once, beyond the village, where the cottages ceased abruptly on either side of the road, they could smell through the darkness and friendly fields again, and they braced themselves for the last long stretch, the home stretch, the stretch that we know as bound to end, sometime in the rattle of a door latch and a sudden firelight, and the sight of familiar things greeting us as they long-absent travelers from far oversea. They plodded along steadily and silently, each of them thinking his own thoughts as the moles ran a good deal on supper. Oh, it was pitch dark, and there was all a strange country for him now, as far as he knew, and he was following obediently in the wake of Rat, leaving the guidance entirely to him. And as for Rat, he is walking a little way ahead, and as his habit was, his shoulders humped, his eyes fixed on the straight gray road in front of him, burp, and so did not notice poor Mole when suddenly the summons reached him and took him like an electric shock. We others, who have long lost or more subtle of the physical senses, have not even proper terms to express an animal's intercommunications with his surroundings, living or otherwise, and have only the word smell, for instance, to include the whole range of delicate thrills which murmur in the nose of an animal night and day, summoning, warning, inciting, repelling. It was one of these mysterious fairy calls from out the void that suddenly reached Mole in the darkness, making him tingle through and through with its very familiar appeal. And even while yet he could not clearly remember what it was, he stopped dead in his tracks, his nose searching hither and thither in its efforts to recapture the fine filament, the telegraphic current that had so strongly moved him. A moment, and he had caught it again, and with it this time came recollection in its fullest flood. Home! Exclamation point. That's what they meant, those caressing appeals, those soft touches wafted through the air, those invisible little hands pulling and tugging all one way. Why, it must be quite close by him at the moment, his old home that had hurriedly forsaken and never sought again. That day when he was first found the river, and now it was sending out its scouts and its messengers to capture him and bring him in. Since his escape on that bright morning, he had hardly given it a thought. So absorbed had he been in his new life and all its pleasures and surprises, its fresh and captivating experiences. Now, with the rush of old memories, how clearly it stood up before him in the darkness, shabby indeed and small and poorly furnished, and yet the home he had made for himself, the home he had been so happy to get back to after his day's work, and the home he had been happy with him too, evidently, and was missing him. Oh, he wanted him back, and he was telling himself through his nose, sorrowfully and reproachfully, but with no bitterness or anger, only the plaintive reminder that it was there, and it wanted him. Well, the call was clear. The summons was played. He must obey it instantly and go. Ratty, he called, full of joyful excitement. Hold on, come back. I want you quick. Oh, come along, Mole. Do, replied the Rat cheerfully, still plodding along. Please stop, Ratty, pleaded the poor Mole in anguish of heart. You don't understand. It's my home. My old home. I've just come across the smell of it. It must be close by here, really quite close, and I must go to it. I must. Oh, I must. Oh, come back, Ratty. Please come back. The Rat was by this time very far ahead, too far to hear clearly what the Mole was calling, too far to catch the sharp note of his painful appeal in his voice. And he was taken up with the weather, for he too could smell something suspiciously like approaching snow. Mole, we mustn't stop now, really, he called back. We'll come for it tomorrow. Whatever it is you found, but I daren't stop now. It's late, and snow's coming on again, and I'm not sure of the way, and I want your nose, Mole, so come on quick. There's a good fellow, and Rat pressed forward on his way without waiting for an answer. Poor Mole stood alone in the road, his heart torn asunder, and a big sob gathering somewhere low down inside him, to leap up to the surface presently. Oh, he knew in passionate escape, but even under such a test as this, his loyalty to his friend stood firm. Never for a moment did he dream of abandoning him. Meanwhile, the wafts from his old home pleaded and whispered, conjured, and finally claimed him imperiously. I dared not tarry longer within their magic circle. With a wench that tore his very heartstrings, he set his face down the road and followed submissively in the track of the Rat, while faint thin little smells, still dogging his retreating nose, reproached him for his new friendship and his callous forgetfulness. With an effort, he caught up to the unsuspecting rat, who began chattering cheerfully about what they would do when they got back, and how jolly a fire of logs in the parlor would be. What a supper he meant to eat. Oh, never noticing his companion's silence and distressful state of mind. At last, however, when they had gone some considerable way further, they were passing some tree stumps at the edge of the copse that bordered the road, and he stopped and said kindly, look here, Mole, old chap. Burp. You seem dead tired. Burp. No talk left in you. And your feet dragging like lead. We'll sit down here for a minute and rest. The snow has held off so far, and for the best part of our journey is over. And the mole subsided forlornly on the tree stump and tried to control himself, for he felt it surely coming. The sob that he had fought with so long refused to be beaten. Up and up. It forced its way to the air, and then another, and then another, and then others thick and fast, till poor Mole at last gave up the struggle and cried freely and helplessly and openly. And now that he knew it was all over, he had lost what could hardly be said to have found. The rat, astonished and dismayed at the violence of Mole's paroxysm of grief, did not dare to speak for a while, and at last he said very quietly and sympathetically, "What is it, old fellow? Whatever can be the matter. Tell us your trouble, and let me see what I can do." Well, poor Mole found it difficult to get any words out between the upheavals of his chest that followed upon another so quickly, and held back speech and choked it as it came. "I know it's a shabby, dingy little place," he sobbed forth at last, brokenly. "Not like your cozy quarters, or Toad's beautiful hall, or Badger's great house, but it's my own little home, and I was fond of it, and I went away and forgot all about it, and then I smelt it suddenly, on the road, and when I called you, and you wouldn't listen, rat, and everything came back to me with a rush, and I wanted it." In all caps. Oh dear, and what you wouldn't turn back, Ratty, and I would have to leave it, though I was smelling it all the time. I thought my heart would break, and that we might just have to gone and had one look at it, Ratty, only one look. It was close by, but you wouldn't turn back, Ratty, you wouldn't turn back. Oh dear. Well, the recollection brought fresh waves of sorrow and sobs again, and took full charge of him, preventing further speech. Rat stared straight in front of him, saying nothing, only patting Mole gently on the shoulder, and after a time he muttered gloomily, "I see it now. What a pig I've been. A pig, that's me, just a pig, a plain pig." He waited till Mole's sobs came gradually less stormy and more rhythmical, and he waited until the last sniffs were frequent and sobs only intermittent. And then he rose from his seat, and remarking carelessly, "Well, now, we'd better be getting on, old chap. Set up the road again, over the toilsome way that they've come." Oh, so he's not going to turn around. "Wherever you going to, Ratty," cried the Mole, tearfully, looking up in alarm. "We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow," replied the rat pleasantly, "so that you can better come along, for it'll take some finding, and we shall want your nose." "Oh, come back, Ratty, do," cried the Mole, getting up and hurrying after him. "It's no good, I'll tell you. It's too late. What, you just wanted to go to the house a second ago. And too dark, and the place is too far off, and the snow's coming, and I never meant to let you know I was feeling that way about it. It's all an accident and a mistake, and think of the riverbank. Oh, and your supper." "Hang Riverbank, and supper too," said the rat heartily. "I'll tell you, I'm going to find this place now if I stay out all night. So cheer up, old chap. Take my arm, and we'll very soon be back there again." Still snuffling, pleading, and reluctant, Mole suffered himself to be dragged back along the road by his imperious companion, who, by a flow of cheerful talk and anecdote, endeavored to beguile his spirits back and make the weary way seem shorter. When at last it seemed to Rat that they must be nearing that part of the road where the Mole had been, quote, held up, and now no more talking. Business! Use your nose, and give your mind to it. They moved on in silence for some little way, when suddenly Rat was conscious, though his arm that was linked to Mole's, of a faint sort of electric thrill that was passing down the animal's body. Oh, instantly he disengaged himself, fell back a pace, and waited, all attention. The signals were coming through. and Mole stood a moment rigid while his uplifted nose, quivering slightly, felt the air. Then a short, quick run forward, a fault, a check, a try-back, and then a slow... What's a try-back? And then a slow, steady, confident advance. The rat, much excited, kept close to his heels as the mole, with something of the air of a sleepwalker, crossed a dry ditch, scrambled through a hedge, and nosed his way over to an open field and trackless and bare in the faint starlight. Suddenly, without giving warning, he dived, but the rat was on the alert and promptly followed him down the tunnel to which his unerring nose had faithfully led him. Burp. Oh, it was close and airless, and the earthy smell was strong. And it seemed a long time to Rat ere the passage ended, and he could stand erect and stretch and shake himself. While the mole struck a match, and by its light the rat saw that they were standing in an open space, neatly swept and sanded underfoot. And directly facing them was Mole's little front door, with Mole's End painted in Gothic lettering over the bell pull on the side. Mole reached down a lantern from a nail on the whale and lit it. And the rat, looking round him, saw that they were in a sort of forecourt. A garden seat stood on either side of the door, and on the other a roller. For the mole, who was a tidy animal when at home, could not stand having his ground kicked up by other animals into little runs that ended in earth heaps. On the walls hung wire baskets with ferns in them, alternating with brackets carrying plaster statuary, Garibaldi, and the infant Samuel, and Queen Victoria, and other heroes of modern Italy. Down on one side of the forecourt ran a skittle alley with benches all along it, and little wooden tables marked with rings that hinted at beer mugs. Oh, and in the middle was a small round pond containing goldfish and surrounded by a cockleshell border, and out of the center of the pond rose a fanciful erection clothed in more cockleshells and topped by a large silver glass ball. Oh boy, that reflected everything all wrong and had a very pleasing effect. Well, Mole's face beamed at the sight of all these objects so dear to him, especially the erection with the glass ball, and he hurried Rat through the door and lit a lamp in the hall and took one glance around his old home. He saw the dust lying thick on everything, saw the cheerless, deserted look of the long-neglected house, and its narrow, meager dimensions, its worn and shabby contents, and collapsed again on the hall chair, his nose to his paws. "Oh, Ratty," he cried dismally. "Why did I ever do it? Why did I bring you this poor, cold little place on a night like this, when you might have been at the riverbank by this time, toasting your toes before a blazing fire, with all your own nice things about you?" Well, the rat paid no heed to this doleful self-reproaches. He was running here and there, opening doors, inspecting rooms and cupboards, and lighting lamps and candles and sticking them up everywhere. "What a capital little house this is, eh?" he called out cheerily. "So compact, so well planned. Oh, everything here and everything in its place. Oh, well, we'll make a jolly night of it. Oh, the first thing we want is a good fire. I'll see to that. And I always know where to find things, so this is the parlor. It's splendid. And your own idea, these little sleeping bunks in the wall, capital. Now, I'll fetch the wood and the coals, and you get a duster, Mole, and you'll find one in the drawer of the little kitchen. And try to smarten things up a bit. Bustle about, old chap." Encouraged by this inspiriting companion, Mole roused himself and dusted and polished with energy and heartiness. Oh, while the rat, running to and fro with armfuls of fuel, soon had a cheerful blaze roaring up the chimney, and he hailed the Mole to come and warm himself, but Mole promptly had another fit of the blues, dropping down onto a couch in dark despair and burying his face with the duster. "Rat," he moaned, "how about your supper, you poor, cold, hungry, weary animal? I've got nothing to give you, nothing, not a crumb." "What a fellow you are for giving in," said the rat reproachfully. "Why, only just now I saw a sardine opener in the kitchen dresser, quite distinctly. I was going to say, Mole's been gone for like 6 months or something. There's no food in there that's going to be any good if it's not all cans. And everyone knows what it means that these sardines are somewhere about the neighborhood. Rouse yourself, pull yourself together, and come with me and forage." And they went and foraged accordingly, hunting through every cupboard and turning out every drawer. The result was not so very depressing after all, though, of course, it might have been better. A tin of sardines, a box of Captain's biscuits, nearly full, and German sausage, encased in silver paper. Oh, there's a banquet for you, observed the rat as he arranged the table. And I know some animals who would give their ears to be sitting down to supper with us tonight. No bread, groaned the mole dolorously. No butter, no pâté de foie gras. Pâté de foie gras. All right, whatever. No champagne, continued the rat, grinning. And that reminds me, what's that little door at the end of the passage? Your cellar, of course. Every luxury in this house. Just you wait a minute. And he made for the cellar door, and presently reappeared, somewhat dusty, with a bottle of beer in each paw, and another under each arm. Self-indulgent beggar you seem to be, Mole, he observed. Deny yourself nothing. Drink this beer, deny yourself nothing. This is really the jolliest little place I've ever was in. Now, wherever did you pick up those prints? Make the place look so home-like, they do. No wonder you're so fond of it, Mole. Tell us about it. How'd you come to make it what it is? Then, while Rat busied himself fetching plates and knives and forks and mustard, and when he mixed it in an egg cup, the mole, his bosom still heaving with stress and recent emotion, related somewhat shyly at first, but with more freedom, as he warmed to his subject, how this was planned and how this was thought out, and how he got through the windfall from an aunt, and it is a wonderful find and a bargain. Other thing was bought out of labor savings and a certain amount of going without. Oh, his spirits finally quite restored, he must needs go and caress his possessions gross, and take a lamp and show off their points to his visitor, and expatiate on them, and quite forgetful of the supper that both had much needed. Rat, who was desperately hungry, but strove to conceal it, nodding seriously, examining with a puckered brow, and saying, "Oh, wonderful, most remarkable," at intervals, and a chance for observation was given to him. And at last, Rat succeeded in decoying him at the table, and it just got seriously to work with the sardine opener when sounds were heard from the forecourt without sounds. What? Oh, forecourt without. Sounds like the scuffling of small feet in the gravel and a confused murmur of tiny voices, while broken sentences reached them. Now, all in line, Hold the lantern up a bit, Tommy. Clear your throats first. No coughing after I say 1, 2, 3. Where's young Bill? Here, come on, do this. We're all awaiting. What's up? Inquired the rat, pausing in his labors. I think it must be the field mice, replied the mole, with a touch of pride in his manner. Now they go around carol singing regularly at this time of year. They're quite an institution, these parts. And they never pass me over. They come to Mole End last of all. And I used to give them hot drinks. And supper, too, sometimes, when I could afford it, and it will be like old times to hear them again. Let's have a look at him, cried the rat, jumping up and running to the door. It was a pretty sight and a seasonable one. That met their eyes when they flung the door open. In the forecourt, lit by the dim rays of the horn lantern, some 8 or 10 little field mice stood in a semicircle, red worsted comforters. What's a worsted? I'm not looking that up. Round their throats. Just scarf. Their forepaws thrust deep into their pockets and their feet jiggling from warmth. With little beady eyes, they glanced shyly at each other, sniggering a little, sniffing and applying coat sleeves a good deal. And as the door opened, one of the elder ones that carried the lantern was just saying, "Now then, 1, 2, and 3. And forthwith, their shrill, another song's coming up. Shrill little voices rose in the air, singing one of the old-time carols that their forefathers composed in the fields that were fallow and held by frost, or when snowbound in chimney corners and handed down to be sung in the miry street to lamp-lit windows at Yule time. Carol, God. The village is all this frosty tide. Let your door swing open wide, through the wind may follow the snow beside. Yet draw us in by your fire to bide. Joy will be yours in the morning. That didn't rhyme. Here we stand in the cold and the sleet, blowing fingers and stamping feet. Come from far and wide you'd agree, you by the fire and we in the street, bidding you joy in the morning. Doesn't rhyme. For ere one half of the night was gone, suddenly a star has led us on, raining bliss and bench and bliss tomorrow and more anon. Joy for every morning. Doesn't rhyme. Goodman Joseph toiled through the, I hate this, saw the star table low, and Mary let it further goes. Welcome Thatch, and litter below, joy was theirs in the morning. And then they heard the angels tell, who were the first to cry Noel? Animals all, and it befell in the stable where they did dwell. Joy shall be theirs in the morning. The voices ceased. The singers, bashful but smiling, exchanged sidelong glances, and silence succeeded. But for a moment only. Then, from up above and far away, down the tunnel they had so lately traveled, was borne to their ears in a faint musical hum the sound of distant bells rising, a joyful and clangorous pearl. "Oh, very well sung, boys," cried the rat heartily. "And now, come along in, all of you, and warm yourselves by the fire, and have something hot." "Yes, come along, field mice," cried the mole eagerly. "Oh, this is quite like old times. Shut the door after you, pull up the settle by the fire, and now you just have to wait a minute while oh, Ratty," he cried in despair, plumping down in the seat, with tears impending. "Whatever are we going to do? We've got nothing to give them." "You leave that all to me," said the masterful rat. "Here, you with the lantern, come over this way, and I want to talk to you. Now, tell me, are there shops open at this hour of night?" "Oh, why, certainly, sir," replied the field mouse respectfully. "At this time of year, our shops open to all sorts of hours." "Well, then, look here," said the rat. "You go off at once, you and your lantern, and you get me, big M dash." Here, much muttered conversation ensued, and the mole only heard bits of it, such as "fresh mind," no, a pound of that will do. "You see buggins, if we have any other, and only the best, and if you can't get it there, try somewhere else. And yes, of course, homemade, no tin stuff. And then, do the best you can." Finally, there was a chink of coin passing from paw to paw. That sounds adorable. And the field mouse was provided with an ample basket for his purchases, and off he hurried, he and his lantern. The rest of the field mice, perched in a row on the settle, their small legs swinging, gave themselves up to enjoyment of the fire and toasted their chilblains, not looking it up till they tingled, while the mole, failing to draw them into easy conversation, plunged into family history and made each of them recite the names of their numerous brothers, who were too young, and it appeared to be allowed to go out a carolin this year, but looked forward very shortly to winning the parental consent. The rat, meanwhile, was busy examining the label on one of the beer bottles. "I perceive this to be old Burton," he remarked approvingly. "Sensible mole. Oh, the very thing. Now we shall be able to mull some ale. Get some things ready, mole, while I draw the corks." It did not take long to prepare the brew and thrust the tin heater well into the red heart of the fire, and soon every field mouse was sipping, and coughing and choking, for the little mulled ale goes a long way, and wiping his eyes, and laughing and forgetting he had ever been cold in his whole life. "How they act plays, too, these fellows," the mole explained to the rat. "Make them up all by themselves, and act them afterwards. And then very well they do it, too. Oh, they gave us a capital one last year about a field mouse, obviously, who was captured by sea by a Barbary coursier who made a row in the gallery. And then he escaped and got home again. His lady love had gone into a covenant. Here, you were in it, I remember. Get up and recite a bit." Oh, for Christ's sake. Also, the time it takes for one mouse to go out and do all this shopping and come all the way back, all these mice could have just gone home. They said that he's like the last house that they wait for last, because usually they get to get drunk for free. But nope, now they got to sit around for like an hour. The field mouse addressed and got up for his legs, giggled shyly, looked around the room, and remained absolutely tongue-tied. His comrades cheered him on, and Mole coaxed and encouraged him. The rat went so far as to take him by the shoulders and shake him. That sounds aggressive, but nothing could overcome his stage fright. Well, then why don't you try hitting him? And then they were all busily engaged on him, like watermen applying to the Royal Humane Society's regulations to a case of longing submersion. And when the latch clicked, the door opened, and the field mouse with the lantern reappeared, staggering under the weight of his basket. There was no more talk of play acting. Once the very real and solid contents of the basket had been tumbled out on the table under the generalship of the rat, everyone was set to do something or to fetch something, and very few minutes of supper was ready, and Mole, as he took the head of the table in a sort of dream, saw a lately barren board set thick with savory comforts, saw his little friends' faces brighten and beam as they fell to without delay, and then let himself loose, for he was famished indeed, on the provender so magically provided, thinking, what a happy homecoming as it turned out after all. As they ate, They talked of old times, and the field mice gave him the local gossip to the date and answered, as well as they could, the 100 questions he had to ask them. Oh, the rat had little or said nothing, and only taking care that each guest had what he wanted, and plenty of it, and that the mole had no trouble or anxiety about anything. Oh, they clattered off at last, very grateful and showering wishes of the season, with their jacket pockets stuffed with remembrances for the small brothers and sisters at home. And when the door had closed on the last of them and the chink of the lanterns had died away, Mole and Rat kicked the fire up, drew their chairs in, brewed themselves a last nightcap of mulled ale, and discussed the events of the long day, and at last the Rat, with a tremendous yawn, said, Mole, old chap, I'm ready to drop. Sleepy is simply not the word. That's your own bunk over there on the side? Very well, then, I'll take this. Oh, what a ripping little house this is. Everything's so handy. He clambered over to his bunk and rolled himself well into the blankets, and slumber gathered him forthwith. As a swath of barley is, folded into the arms of the reaping machine. The wary mole, who was also glad in turn to, without delay, and soon had his head on his pillow, and a great joy and contentment. This ere he closed his eyes and let them wander around his old room, mellow in the glow of firelight that played or rested on familiar and friendly things which had long been unconsciously a part of him, and now smilingly received him back without rancor. And he was just now in the frame of mind that the tactful Rat had quietly worked to bring about in him. Oh, he saw clearly how plain and simple, how narrow even it all was, but clearly, too, how much it all meant to him, the special value of some such anchorage in one's existence. He did not at all want to abandon the new life in its splendid spaces, to turn back the sun or the air they all offered him and creep home and stay there. The upper world was too strong and called to him. Still, even down there, he knew he must return to the larger stage. But it was good to think that he had this to come back to, this place which is all his own. These things which were so glad to see him again and could always be counted upon the same simple welcome. Well, with that, why don't you get in the closet? I know, it's weird and it's creepy, but I don't like to sit in the same spot and do this entire thing, so what I want to do is get up and relocate around the mansion, and so, I don't want to take you to any of the other rooms in my mansion, otherwise you'd know everything about me. So I'm just going to take you over to this closet where I'm going to play the guitar while I tell you about the latest upcoming books from Penguin Random House. Here I come. There you are. See, it's not so bad in here. There's enough room. It's not like our knees are touching or anything. You want to hear about a new book by Kate Lebo called Pie School? Yeah, sure. You want to hear about it? Pie School's now in session. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Since the first publication of Pie School in 2014, Kate Lebo has inspired bakers everywhere with her witty and encouraging lessons on all things flaky and sweet. Oh, this completely revised and updated edition includes 20 brand new pies, including 2 new chapters, one on savory meat or vegetable pies, and one on quote-unquote difficult, or in parentheses, lesser-known fruit pies. Oh, plus updates to the originals, 80 in total. Oh, her proven process to achieve flakiness and structure, along with recipes for delicious, inspired fillings, will give home cooks all the skills they need to make the best pie of their lives. Beyond the bake, Lebo also invites us to ruminate on the social history, the meaning, and the place of pie in the pantheon of favorite foods. Recipes include brandied apple and cracked cardamom pie, you ready for this? White peach and raspberry galette, rosemary rhubarb and vanilla chavra galette. Don't know what the heck that would even look like. Winter luxury pumpkin pie. Huckleberry pie, Marionberry pie with hazelnut crumble, lamb, pumpkin, and quince pie. And, I've written a song about this, the classic chicken pot pie. Well, with that's Pie School by Kate Lebo. You can get it in paperback for $30. It's already out, and you can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop.org, Hudson Booksellers, Powell's, Target, and you know that Pie School has finally made it in its second edition when it's finally available at Walmart. Well, with that, Why don't we get out of this closet, go back to the library, and read the next chapter of this book? Well, time to get in the pool and get wet. Chapter 6, Mr. Toad. It was a bright morning in the early part of summer. The river had resumed its wonted banks and its accustomed pace, and a hot sun seemed to be pulling everything green and bushy and spiky up out of the earth toward him, as if by strings. Oh, the mole and the water rat had been up since dawn, very busy on matters connected with boats, and the opening of the boat season, and painting and varnishing and mending paddles, and repairing cushions, that's weird, hunting for missing boat hooks, and so on. And were finishing breakfast in their little parlour and eagerly discussing the plans for the day when a heavy knock sounded on the door. "Bother," said the rat, all over egg. "See who it is, Mole, like a good chap, since finished." And the mole went to attend the summons, and Rat heard him cry, "Surprise!" Then he flung the parlor door open and announced with such importance, "Mr. Badger!" Oh, this was a wonderful thing indeed, that the Badger should pay a formal call on them, or indeed on anybody. Oh, he generally had to be caught if you wanted him badly, and if he slipped quietly along the hedgerow of an early morning or a late evening, or else hunted up in his own house in the middle of the wood, which was a serious undertaking. The Badger strode heavily into the room. Again, it's like he's in the mob. And he stood looking at the two animals with an expression full of seriousness. The rat let his egg spoon fall on the tablecloth and sat open-mouthed. "The hour has come," said the Badger at last with great solemnity. "What hour?" said the rat uneasily, glancing at the clock on the mantelpiece. "Whose hour, you should rather say," replied the Badger. "Why, Toad's hour, the hour of Toad. I said I would take him in hand as soon as winter was well over, and I'm going to take him in hand today." "Oh, Toad's hour, of course," cried the mole delightedly. "Hooray! I remember now. Well, we'll teach him to be a sensible toad." Wow, they're all getting really worked up about treating someone like shit. "This very morning," continued the Badger, taking an armchair, "as I learnt last night from a trustworthy source." Again, this guy's connected. He's in the mob. He's got a network of people giving him information all the time. "Another new and exceptionally powerful motor car will arrive at Toad Hall on approval or return. At this very moment, perhaps, Toad is busy arraying himself in those singularly hideous habiliments. Habiliments. God damn it. I just gotta make sure I'm saying it correctly. Habiliment. I'm saying that right. Just clothing. All right, fine, whatever. So dear to him, which transform him from a comparatively good-looking toad into an object which throws any decent-minded animal that comes across it into a violent fit. Oh, we must be up and doing ere it's too late. You two animals will accompany me instantly to Toad Hall, and the work of rescue shall be accomplished." "Right you are," cried Rat, starting up. "Oh, we'll rescue the poor unhappy animal. We'll convert him. He'll be the most converted toad that ever was before we're done with him." Wow, this is really weird. They set off up up the road on their mission of mercy. Badger leading the way. Animals, when in company, talk in a proper and sensible manner, in single file, instead of sprawling all across the road and being of no use or support to each other in a sudden case of terrible danger. They reached the carriage drive of Toad Hall to find, as the Badger anticipated, a shiny new motor car of great size, painted a bright red, Toad's favorite color, standing in front of the house. And as they neared the door, it was flung open, and Toad, arrayed with goggles and cap, gaiters, and enormous overcoat, came swaggering down the steps, drawing on his gauntleted gloves. "Hello! Come on, you fellows," he cried cheerfully on catching sight of them. "You're just in time to come with me for a jolly, His hearty accents faltered and fell away as he noticed the stern, unbending look on the countenances of his silent friends, and his invitation remained unfinished. The Badger strode up the steps, Take him inside, he said sternly to his companions. Then, as Toad was hustled through the doors, struggling and protesting, he turned to the chauffeur in charge of the new motor car. I'm afraid you won't be wanted today, he said. Mr. Toad has changed his mind, and he will not require the car. Please understand that this is final. You needn't wait. And then he followed the others inside and shut the door. Now then, he said to Toad, when the four of them stood together in the hall. First of all, take those ridiculous things off. Shan't, replied Toad with great spirit. What's the meaning of this gross outrage? I demand an instant explanation. Take them off, then, you two, ordered the Badger briefly. And they had to lay Toad out on the floor, kicking and calling all sorts of names before they could get to work properly. Then the rat sat on him. What? And the mole got his motor clothes off of him bit by bit, and they stood up on his legs again. Oh, a good deal of blustering spirit seemed to have evaporated with the removal of his fine panoply, and now that he was merely Toad, and no longer the terror of the highway, he giggled feebly and looked from one to another appealingly, seeming quite to understand the situation. Well, you knew it must come to this, sooner or later, Toad, said the Badger, severely. You disregarded all the warnings we've given you, and you've gone on squandering the money your father left you, and you're getting us animals a bad name in the district by your furious driving, and your smashes and your rows with the police. Giving us animals? So what, the humans know about this little Toad? How big is this Toad? The Toad's small. Humans with their own carts, or horses or cars would just squish him, just go right over him. But apparently you're giving us animals a bad name. I would need to understand the universe that this book takes place in. By fierce driving, independence is all very well, but we animals never allow our friends to make fools of themselves beyond a certain limit, and that limit you've reached. Oh, now you're a good fellow in many respects, and I don't want to be too hard on you. I'll make one more effort to bring you to reason. You will come with me into the smoking room. Oh, I've got one of those. And there you will hear some facts about yourself, and then you'll see whether you come out of that room the same Toad that you went in. He took Toad firmly by the arm, led him into the smoking room, and closed the door behind them. I wonder if their smoking room's got birds in it. Mine's got birds in it because my wife put birds in cages in there. Oh, that's no good, said the rat contemptuously. Talking to Toad will never cure him. He'll say anything. And they made themselves comfortable in armchairs and waited patiently. Through the closed door, they could just hear the long, contemptuous drone of Badger's voice, rising and falling in waves of oratory, and presently they noticed that the sermon began to be punctuated at intervals by long-drawn sobs, evidently proceeding from the bosom of Toad, who was a soft-hearted and affectionate fellow, very easily converted, and for the time being to any point of view. And after some 3/4 of an hour, the door opened and Badger reappeared, solemnly leading by the paw a very limp and dejected Toad. His skin hung baggily about him, and his legs wobbled, and his cheeks were furrowed by the tears so plentifully called forth by Badger's moving discourse. Sit down there, Toad, said the Badger kindly, pointing to his chair. My friends, he went on, I'm pleased to inform you that Toad has at last seen the error of his ways. Oh, he is truly sorry for his misguided conduct in the past, and he has undertaken to give up motor cars entirely and forever. I have his solemn promise to that effect. That's very good news, said the Mole gravely. Very good news indeed, observed the Rat dubiously. If only, he was looking very hard at Toad as he said this, and he could not help but thinking he perceived something vaguely resembling a twinkle in that animal's still sorrowful eye. Oh, there's one thing more to be done, continued the gratified Badger. Toad, I want you solemnly to repeat before your friends here that you fully admitted to me in the smoking room just now, first, that you're sorry for what you've done, and that you see the folly of it all. Man, there was a long, long pause, and Toad looked desperately this way and that, while the other animals waited in grave silence. Then at last he spoke. No, he said a little sullenly, but stoutly. No, I'm not sorry. And it wasn't folly at all. Oh, it was simply glorious. What? Cried Badger, greatly scandalized. "And you backsliding animal. You didn't tell me that just now in there." "Oh, yes, in there," said Toad impatiently. "I'd have said anything in there. Oh, you're so eloquent, dear Badger. It's so moving and so convincing. But put all your points to frightfully well. But you can do what you like to me within there, and you know it. But I've been searching my mind since and going over things on it. And I find that I'm not a bit sorry or repentant, really. So it's no earthly good saying that I am, now, is it? And then you don't promise, said the Badger, never to touch a motor car again? "Certainly not," replied the Toad emphatically. "On the contrary, I faithfully promise that the very first motor car I see, poop, off I go in it." "Oh, told you so, didn't I?" observed the Rat, said the Mole. "Well, very well then," said the Badger firmly, rising to his feet. "Since you won't yield to persuasion, we'll try what force can do. I feared it would come to this all along. You've often asked us three to come and stay with you, Toad, in this handsome house of yours. Well, now we're going to. When we've converted you to a proper point of view, we may quit, but not before. Take him upstairs, you two, and lock him up in the bedroom while we arrange matters between ourselves. It's for your own good, Toady, you know," said the Rat kindly as Toad, kicking and struggling, was hauled up the stairs by his two faithful friends. "Think what fun we shall have together, as we used to, when you're quite got over this painful attack of yours." "Oh, we'll take great care of everything for you till you're well, Toad," said the Mole. "We'll see your money isn't wasted as it has been." "Well, no more of those regrettable incidents with the police," said Toad, said the Rat. "Police, Toad," said the Rat. "Whatever, I read that weird." And as they thrust him into his bedroom. "And no more weeks in the hospital, being ordered about by female nurses, Toad," said the Mole, turning the key on him. They descended the stair, Toad shouting abuse at them through the keyhole, and the three friends when they met in conference in the situation. "It's going to be a tedious business," said the Badger, sighing. "I've never seen Toad so determined. However, we will see it out. We must never be left an instant unguarded. We shall have to take it in turns to be with him till the poison has worked itself out of his system." They arranged watches accordingly. Each animal took it in turns to sleep in Toad's room at night. They divided the day up between them. At first, Toad was undoubtedly very trying to his careful guardians when his violent paroxysm possessed him, and he would arrange bedroom chairs in rude resemblance to a motor car, and would crouch in the foremost of them, and then bend forward, staring fixedly ahead, making uncouth and ghastly noises, till the climax was reached, and when turning a complete somersault, he would lie prostrate amidst the ruins of the chairs, apparently completely satisfied for the moment. As time passed, however, these painful seizures grew gradually less frequent, and his friends strove to divert his mind into fresh channels. Oh, but this interest in other matters did not seem to revive. He grew apparently languid and depressed. One fine morning, the Rat, whose turn it was to go on duty, went upstairs to relieve Badger, whom he found fidgeting to be off and stretching his legs in a long ramble around the wood and down the earth's burrows. "Toad's still in bed," he told the Rat outside the door. "Can't get much out of him except, oh, leave him alone, he wants nothing. Perhaps he'll be better presently. It may pass off in time. Burp, don't be unduly anxious," and so on. Now you look out, Rat, when Toad's quiet and submissive and playing at being the hero of a Sunday school prize. Then he's at his artfulest. Oh, there's sure to be something up. I know him. Well, now I must be off. "How are you today, old chap?" inquired the Rat cheerfully as he approached Toad's bedside. He had to wait some minutes for an answer. At last a feeble voice replied, "Thank you so much, dear Ratty. So good of you to inquire. But first, tell me how you are yourself, and the excellent Mole." "Oh, we're all right," replied the Rat. "Mole," he added cautiously, "is going out for a run around with Badger, and then they'll be out till luncheon time, and so you and I will spend a pleasant morning together, and I'll do my best to amuse you. Now jump up, yeah? There's a good fellow, and don't lie moping there on a fine morning like this." "Oh, dear kind Rat," murmured Toad. "Oh, how little you realize my condition, and how very far I am from jumping up. Now, if ever, do not trouble about me. I hate being a burden to my friends, and I do not expect to be one much longer. Indeed, I almost hope not." "Why, Hope not, too, said the rat heartily. You've been a fine bother to us all this time, and I'm glad to hear it's going to stop. And in weather like this, and the boating season, is just beginning. That's too bad of you, Toad. It isn't the trouble we mind, it's that you're making us all miss an awful lot. Well, I'm afraid it is trouble you mind, though, replied the Toad languidly. Oh, I can quite understand it. It's natural enough. Are you tired of bothering about me? I mustn't ask you to do anything further. I'm a nuisance. I know. Oh, you are indeed, said the rat, but I tell you, I'll take any trouble on earth for you, if only you'd be a sensible animal. And if I thought that ratty, murmured Toad, more feebly than ever, then I would beg for you, for the last time, probably, to step around the village as quickly as possible. Even now it may be too late, and fetch the doctor. But you won't bother. It's only trouble, and perhaps we may as well let things take their course. Well, what do you want a doctor for? Inquired the rat, coming closer to examine him. He certainly lay very still and flat. His voice was weaker, and his manner much changed. Well, surely you've noticed of late, murmured Toad. But no, why should you? Noticing things is only a trouble. Tomorrow, indeed, you may be saying to yourself, oh, if only I had noticed sooner, if only I had done something. But no, it's a trouble. Never mind, forget I asked. Oh, look here, old man, said the rat, beginning to gather alarm. Of course, I'll fetch a doctor for you if you really think you want him, but you can hardly be bad enough for that yet. Let's talk about something else. I fear, dear friend, said Toad with a sad smile, that, quote, talk can do little in this case, or doctors either for that matter. Still, one must grasp at the slightest straw. And, by the way, while you're about it, I hate to give you additional trouble, but I happen to remember that you will pass the door. Would you mind at the same time asking the lawyer to step up? It'd be a convenience to me, and there are, moments perhaps, I should say there's a moment, where one must face disagreeable tasks at whatever cost is exhausted nature. A lawyer? Oh, it must be really bad, the affrighted rat said to himself as he hurried from the room, not forgetting, however, to lock the door carefully behind him. Outside, he stopped to consider. The other two were far away, and he had no one to consult. Oh, it's best to be on the safe side, he said, on reflection. Oh, I've known Toad fancy himself frightfully bad before, without the slightest reason, but I never heard him ask for a lawyer, eh? And if there's nothing really the matter, the doctor will tell him he's an old ass, and cheer him up, and then it'll be something gained. I'd better humor him and go. It won't take very long. So he ran off to the village on his errand of mercy. The Toad, who had hopped lightly out of bed as soon as he heard the key was turned in the lock, watched him eagerly from the window till he disappeared down the carriage drive. Then, laughing heartily, he dressed as quickly as possible in the smartest suit he could lay his hands on at the moment, and filled his pockets with cash. He's got like a dresser full of cash, which he took from a small drawer in the dressing table. Well, that answers that question. And next, knotting the sheets from his bed together and trying one end from an improvised rope around the central mullion of the handsome Tudor window, which formed such a feature of his bedroom, he scrambled out, slid lightly to the ground, and, taking the opposite direction of the rat, marched off lightheartedly, whistling a merry tune. Well, it's a gloomy luncheon for Rat, when the Badger and the Mole at length returned. And he had faced them at the table with his pitiful, unconvincing story. The Badger's caustic, not to say brutal remarks, may be imagined, and therefore passed over. But it was painful to the Rat that even the Mole, though he took his friend's side as far as possible, could not help saying, you been a bit of a duffer, this time, Ratty. Toad, too, of all animals. Oh, he did it awfully well, said the crestfallen Rat. He did you awfully well, rejoined the Badger hotly. However, talking won't mend matters. He's got clear away for the time, that's certain. And the worst of it is, he'll be so conceited with what he'll think is his cleverness that he may commit any folly. Oh, one comfort is we're free now, and needn't waste any more of our precious time doing sentry go. But we better continue to sleep at Toad Hall for a while longer. Toad may be back at any moment on a stretcher or between two policemen. So spoke the Badger, not knowing what the future held in store. So much for water, and how turbid of a character is running under bridges before Toad would sit at ease again in the ancestral hall. Meanwhile, Toad, gay and irresponsible, was walking briskly along the high road some miles from home. At first, he had taken bypaths and crossed many fields and changed his course several times in case of pursuit. But now, feeling by this time safe from recapture and the sun smiling brightly on him, and all nature joining in a chorus of approval to the song of self-praise that his own heart was singing to him, he almost danced along the road in satisfaction and conceit. "Smart piece of work, that," he remarked to himself, chuckling. Brain against brute force, and Brain came out on the top, as it's bound to do. Oh, poor old Ratty. My, won't he catch it when Badger gets back? A worthy fellow, Ratty, with many good qualities, but very little intelligence and absolutely no education. Oh, I must take him in hand some day and see if I can make something of him. Full of conceited thoughts such as these, he strode along, his head in the air, till he reached a little town where the sign of Red Lion swinging across a road halfway down the main street reminded him that he had not breakfasted that day, and that he was exceedingly hungry after his long walk. He marched into the inn and ordered the best luncheon that could be provided at such short notice, and sat down to eat it in the coffee room. He's about halfway through his meal when an only too familiar sound approaching down the street made him start and fall, trembling all over. The poop drew nearer and nearer. The car could be heard to turn in the inn yard and come to a stop. And Toad had to hold on to the leg of the table to conceal his overmastering emotion. Presently, the party entered the coffee room, hungry, talkative, and gay, voluble on their experiences in the morning and the merits of the chariot had brought them along so well. Toad listened eagerly, all ears, for a time, and at last he could stand it no longer. He slipped out of the room quietly, paid his bill at the bar, and as soon as he got outside, sauntered round quietly to the inn yard. There cannot be any harm," he said to himself, "in my only just, looking at it." And the car stood in the middle of the yard, quite unattended, and the stable helps and the other hangers-on being all at their dinner, Toad walked slowly around it, inspecting, criticizing, musing deeply. "I wonder," he said to himself presently, "I wonder if this sort of car starts easily." Next moment, hardly knowing how it came about, he found that he had hold of the handle and was turning it, and as the familiar sound broke forth, the old passion seized on Toad and completely mastered him, body and soul. As if in a dream, he found himself somehow seated in the driver's seat. As if in a dream, he pulled the lever and swung the car round the yard and out of the through the archway. And, as if in a dream, all sense of right and wrong, all fear of obvious consequences, seemed temporarily suspended. He increased his pace, and as the car devoured the street and leapt forth on the high road through the open country, he was only conscious that he was Toad once more. Toad at his best and highest. Toad the terror, the traffic queller, the lord of the lone trail, for whom all must give way or be smitten into nothingness and everlasting night. He chanted as he flew, and the car responded with sonorous drone. The miles were eaten up under him as he sped. He knew not whither, fulfilling his instincts, living his hour, reckless of what might come to him. Then there's a bunch of stars. Apparently this is not a chapter, just another segment. "To my mind," observed the chairman of the bench of magistrates cheerfully, "the only difficulty that presents itself in this otherwise very clear case is how we can possibly make it sufficiently hot for the incorrigible rogue and hardened ruffian who we see cowering in the dock before us. Let us see. He's been found guilty on the clearest evidence, first, of stealing a valuable motor car. Secondly, of driving to the public danger. And thirdly, of gross impertinence to the rural police. Mr. Clerk, will you tell us, please, what is the very stiffest penalty we can impose on each of these offenses, without, of course, giving the prisoner the benefit of any doubt, because there isn't any?" The clerk scratched his nose with a pen. Some people would consider," he observed, "that stealing the motor car is the worst offense, so it is. But cheeking the police undoubtedly carries the severest penalty, and so it ought, supposing that you were to say 12 months for the theft, which is mild, and 3 years for the furious driving, which is lenient, and 15 years for the cheek, which is pretty bad sort of cheek, judging by what we've heard in the witness box, even if you only believe 1/10 part of what you heard. And I never believed more myself. Those figures, if added together correctly, tot up to 19 years. First rate, said the chairman, so you'd better make it around 20 years and be on the safe side, concluded the clerk. Oh, an excellent suggestion, said the chairman approvingly. Prisoner, pull yourself together and try to stand up straight. It's going to be 20 years for you this time. And mind, if you appear for us again upon any charge whatsoever, we shall have to deal with you very seriously. Then the brutal minions of the law fell upon the hapless Toad, loaded him with chains, and dragged him from the courthouse, shrieking, praying, and protesting across the marketplace, where the playful populace, always as severe upon detected crime as they are sympathetic and helpful when one is merely wanted, assailed him with jeers, carrots, oh, that's nice, and popular catchwords. What's a popular catchword back then? Flibbity-gibbet. Like, what would you call someone back then as like a popular catchword? Past hooting school children, their innocent faces lit up with the pleasure they ever derived from the sight of a gentleman in difficulties. Across, well, they just don't like rich people. Across the hollow-sounding drawbridge, below the spiky portcullis, under the frowning archway into the grim old castle whose ancient towers soared high overhead, past guard rooms full of grinning soldiery off duty, past sentries who coughed in horrid sarcastic way, because that is as much as sentry in this post dare do to show this contempt and abhorrence of crime, up the time-worn winding stairs, past men-at-arms and casquette and corselet of steel, darting threatening looks through their vizards across courtyards, where the mastiffs strained at their leash and pawed the air to get at him. Past ancient warders, their halberds, I'm not looking it up, leant against the wall, dozing over a pasty and a flagon of brown ale, and on, past the rack chamber, past the thumbscrew room, past the turning that led to the private scaffold, till they reached the door of the grimmest dungeon that lay at the heart of the innermost keep. There at last they paused, where an ancient gaoler sat fingering a bunch of mighty keys. Odds bodkins, not looking it up, said the sergeant of police, taking off his helmet and wiping his forehead. Rouse thee, old loon, and take over from us for a while this vile Toad, a criminal of deepest guilt and matchless, artfulness and resource. Watch him and ward him with all thy skill. And mark thee well, greybeard, should aught untoward befall, thy old head shall answer for this, and a murrain on both of them. The gaoler nodded grimly, laying his withered hand on the shoulder of the miserable Toad. The rusty key creaked in the lock, and the great door clanged behind them, and the Toad was a helpless prisoner in the remotest dungeon of the best guarded kept of the stoutest castle in all the length and breadth of merry England. That's the end of the chapter. So are these humans that are locking up the Toad? We know that humans exist in this universe he's created, or is it just other animals that happen to have a whole castle, which it's got to be as high as up from a human's waist or something? Like, these are things that humans can find and be like, what the hell is that? That's a whole miniature castle over there. And then they'd see all these animals living in it. All right, you know what? I'm getting upset. Why don't we just move on down to the smoking room, where my wife has kept all of the canaries, and we'll talk about what the hell we just read. Well, there you are. Why don't we light a cigarette and think about what we just learned. We learned that humans exist in this world, and humans don't seem to notice these animals. Building castles, or they have miniature cars. They just kind of, like, the animals just go about their world and can just kind of spy on humans. I don't think a lot of thought was put into this. Well, Chapter 5 captures the mixed emotions that people feel about their home when they return to it after being gone for a while. The title, Dulce Domum, is Latin for sweetly home, giving the idea that this is a place to come to for comfort, but in this case, it's also a place to leave behind for mole growth. And after walking home and peeping through apparently human people's windows, like some kind of pervert, to see what they do, Mole tells Rat that he wants to visit his home after smelling it. And Rat doesn't really know what's going on, but Rat's like, oh, when he finally figures out, it's like, you're a little baby piss pants. Okay, fine, we'll go back to your place. When they get back to his home, it's been neglected for like the last 6 months, and so it's dusty and gross or whatever, and so there's no food or anything like that. But then a bunch of field mice show up to do wintertime caroling, and so they say, oh yeah, they come every year. My house is the last house in their route. I always give them alcohol, so that's the reason why they come here. But they didn't know I don't live here anymore, so what do we do now? Rat goes, we're going to send one of these mice out to the grocery store. It's going to take them like 3 hours. We'll just make the rest of them sit here. So the mouse goes out, and they all sit around and they reenact plays or something. And then eventually the mouse comes back and they all sit around and eat food. And then they go home, and then Rat spends the night at his place. So Mole, after spending a night in Badger's underground lair, felt homesick for the life he had. So now he's got a chance to see it again. And when visiting, he feels instantly comforted, but he also feels the pull of the world outside. So he's in a kind of a thing of flux. He's pulled in two directions, and he doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life, but he definitely wants to get back out there in the world. Then Badger shows up in Chapter 6 and says they got to do something about Toad. And when they visit him, he's got a new car that's just being delivered. So they tell the guy to get rid of that car, and they rip off all his driving clothes and throw him in his bedroom until he chills out. But he doesn't. He fakes that he's dying, and then he sneaks out and steals somebody else's car. He gets caught, and a magistrate throws him in an actual dungeon. There isn't really anything here as poignant as someone leaving their home in the last chapter. This is just the author letting the kid know that he's based on the Toad, and that he's an idiot. So what do we learn from this? Take time for yourself. Go back to your home and reflect on where you're going in your life, and then rain justice down on people you know until they end up in a dungeon where they belong. Well, with that, thank you for listening, and I will see you next week. Well, it appears you found me in the part of the podcast I hate the most, where I tell you all about the places on the internet where you can find me. You can tell I hate this because of the sound effects making it sound like a stormy night in the drawing room of the damned. Now, there's that. Are you cool? I like cool people. It's the reason why I got involved in this business to begin with, just to meet cool people. Not losers. So if you're cool, feel free to go over to my website, nuzzlehouse.com, which just points you to my link tree. Everything's on the link tree. Just go to the link tree if you want to see where I am. And of course, link tree has the dumbest URL in the world. linktr.ee/nuzzlehouse. It's the dumbest thing. If you go to nuzzlehouse.com, it's just going to reroute you over there after giving you some weird error about it not being secure. I hate it. I hate the internet. But if you go there, you get to hear some of the other stuff that I and my wife work on, like the Radio Mystery Theater show, where we try to recreate the same show that used to be on in the 70s, but they don't make any episodes anymore. So we make our own, and we just steal all their commercials. And also, just stating the curious mind, we made a Christmas album. If you go to our link tree, you can see that we made a Christmas album. It's the first thing we did after getting married, which I think everyone should do when they get married, is start talking about the Christmas album they're going to make. And we're working on a new show where we give relationship advice by reading paranormal smut. And since I think you might be cool, you can always just email me directly, glenn.nuzzles@gmail.com. But don't email if you're a nerdling or a dork. Now, back to business. Can't believe I drank all of them already. There's got to be one left.